Hello, readers. Welcome to Reading in the Middle, the podcast where middle grade stories matter and young readers become tomorrow's leaders. I'm your host, Annisha Jeffries, librarian, Kidlit enthusiast, and passionate advocate for stories that change lives. Today's episode is incredibly special. This year marks what would have been Malcolm X's 100th birthday. And there's no better time to reintroduce him to a new generation of readers. Joining me today is the award-winning author, scholar, and historian, Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, here to discuss his powerful new middle grade book, Malcolm Lives. This isn't just Malcolm's story as you've known it. This is Malcolm reimagined with love, honesty, and bravery. It's a story of questions asked, boundaries challenged, and a legacy reborn. So, settle in, open your heart, and prepare to see Malcolm X in a whole new light. Let's begin. Malcolm Lives arrives in a powerful moment. Malcolm X would have turned 100 years old this year. Can you tell our listeners what inspired you to write this book now and why you chose to speak directly to middle grade audiences?
The biggest thing that inspired me to write it now and even to write it for middle grade audiences is because such a biography of Malcolm X hadn't been written for this group of readers in more than 30 years. And Malcolm's story is so inspirational and transformative that I think it's a story, it's a life story that young readers should be reading. And especially when young readers learn about Malcolm's ideological transformation, they sort of can see the way in which we can hold very strongly to particular ideas and change our ideas. When they learn about the racism Malcolm experienced and confronted, it allows them to understand the racism that they may be experiencing and they could confront. But then also when they learn about all the different adversities and challenges Malcolm had to navigate as a young person,
Yes.
from losing his father to his mother being taken away to falling into poverty and hunger to having to live in a detention home to his siblings being broken up to being having his dreams shut down by a teacher to getting in trouble with law enforcement. I mean, Malcolm experienced so many different things that young people are challenging or are facing that we're
Mhm.
not necessarily talking to them as much as we should about those challenges and how great historical figures were able to navigate those challenges. And despite during Malcolm's youth, people thinking he was nothing and going nowhere, he was able to emerge as one of the most influential figures in American history, which allows every young person to see that no matter where they're at, no matter how they're struggling, uh, they could still become influential and impactful like Malcolm X.
You're absolutely right. I did not know who Malcolm X was until after high school. And I read the autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley, and it just opened my eyes um, regarding Malcolm. And, many young readers may be meeting Malcolm for the very first time through your book. So, how would you describe who he was and what made him such a powerful and unforgettable force in American history?
I think, well, who he was someone who came of age to be a Muslim minister, to be an anti-racist revolutionary, meaning he was serious about revolutionizing the United States and even the world to abolish and eliminate racism, to really remove its roots and reconstruct our society to ensure that Black people were treated with dignity and respect and had all the rights that should be afforded to them as human beings. And with that latter being said, he also became a globally recognized advocate for human rights, in which he felt that human beings should be afforded basic rights so that they can live uh, a joyful and productive lives. And he decided that he was going to fight for human rights for everyone, but particularly for Black people. And he was courageous enough to do so. And certainly we can be courageous enough to do so in our time.
Yes, Malcolm Lives is part biography, part imaginative storytelling, but how did you balance historical fact with emotional truth to help young readers really feel Malcolm's journey?
I think I tried to strike that balance through multiple points in this story, writing with the second person and really ensuring that I was engaged in a very direct conversation with the reader, particularly during those emotionally charged moments, so that young people, when they're learning about, let's say, how hungry Malcolm was and how angry he was because he was hungry, and that affected his behavior in school. So they can really think deeply about how would that affect their behavior, right? If they were incredibly hungry and then, angry as a result, how would that affect? So they can better understand what Malcolm was feeling and thinking, or if they were learning about Malcolm being subjected to or witnessing police violence and what Malcolm felt, why he was so angry or why he was so outraged, and why he then decided to say or do what he did. I thought it was important to really ensure that direct connection to the reader.
And it is you fine tune making that connection. It's so good. Listeners, I read the book. I finished it overnight. I could not put it down. And you include uh, intimate moments of from Malcolm's early life, his family, the losses that he endured, his constant questions. Why is it important to center the boy behind the legend?
I don't think that you can fully understand Malcolm X, the legend, or becoming this legendary orator or activist or minister, Muslim minister, without
Mhm.
understanding his youth. And so to give an example, to really be able to understand why Malcolm became such a pivotal activist against racism, you have to understand how much he experienced racism as a young person, how much that harmed him, how much that affected the people that he loved. So, to give an example, after his father is potentially uh, killed by the Black Legion, as Malcolm believed, which was a Ku Klux Klan type organization. So, he not only experienced racist violence at the hand of his father, in terms of affecting his father, but then his father and mother were paying a life insurance uh, company, so that if his father was ever killed, they would they wouldn't necessarily be plunged into poverty. And so his mother, Malcolm's mother, tries to claim that the life insurance money, and the life insurance company uh, rules his death a suicide, even though there was no report that he committed suicide, so that they don't have to pay this Black woman the money that they should be paying her. So then he recognized that, that was an instance of a racist practice that had a negative effect on his mother, had a negative effect on his family. And so it allows us to understand how then, decades later, he could speak very viscerally and passionate
Mhm.
to the negative effects of racism on Black people.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. And then one of the most striking aspects of the book is how it reclaims Malcolm's image, not as a symbol of anger, because that's, the media would portray him as I was growing up, but as someone who was shaped by love, learning, and transformation. Why do you think his story has been misunderstood for so long?
It's interesting because if to use an analogy that Malcolm would use, if a snake comes along and bites a human being, and that human being cries out from the bite, uh, if we understand and tell the full story, then we're not going to see that human being as just crying out or in pain or even angry for no reason. We're going to say they were the victim of a snake bite. In the case of Malcolm, there was a constant covering up of the reasons why he was speaking out so forcefully, because which is to say there was a covering up of the depth of racism that Black people and the depth of racist violence that Black people were facing, and then essentially casting him as crying out or speaking out. And then it makes it seem as if that he's lost something, or he's just angry for no reason, or he's just challenging people for no reason. And that to me is indicative of what's happening today, in which
Mhm.
you have forces who are refusing to acknowledge the policies and practices and violence that particular groups are facing. And then when those groups uh, get outraged, then they cover the outrage.
Say no more. I was going to say something else, but yes, and the outrage is there. And how long can you continuously um, marginalize people before people, explode? So, um, what do you hope middle grade readers, especially those who feel like outsiders or question where they belong, take away from Malcolm's story?
Malcolm's story to me is a story of someone who not only faced these significant challenges from racism, but also somebody who began to question their own value, someone who began to ask to question whether there was something wrong with him, and because he was Black. And so I could see so many young people read, and then eventually he was able to realize, no, the problem wasn't me or people like me. The problem was this larger sort of structure. So I can see so many young people who are reading this book, and they're Black or brown or indigenous or Asian, and realizing that there's nothing wrong with them and everything wrong with racism. I could see girls reading this book and realizing there's nothing wrong with them as girls, but there's everything wrong with sexism. I could see people with disabilities reading this book and realizing that there's nothing wrong with them. And so many youth, because of their identity, are being told that there's something wrong with them. And so for them to read Malcolm's story, and for them to begin to question uh, what truly is the problem, and for them to realize that that problem is not them, to me is can be quite powerful and liberating for our young people.
Absolutely. Was there a moment during the writing of Malcolm Lives that surprised you or stayed with you emotionally?
I think that I think one moment that stays with me emotionally is there's a moment in when I was crafting Malcolm Lives that I'm describing how Malcolm felt after he was incarcerated. So when he first is sent to prison and he's first really staring at those bars. And I quote him as stating that no one who truly, and I'm obviously paraphrasing him, no one who truly understands the glory about humanity will vote to have other human beings caged like they're animals. And
Mhm.
I wrote about how what was striking is that poverty and racism had preyed on Malcolm his whole life, but both remained free. And to me, it stayed with me emotionally because we as a society continue to cage people in a number of different ways, not just in prison, even,
Right.
people caged outside of prison as if they're the problem, as opposed to caging these larger harmful forces in our society.
Yes. And I wanted to ask you as well, because we have Malcolm lives at our library, and I wanted to know, how can teachers and librarians and parents use this book to spark a courageous conversation about race identity and justice in the classroom and in homes?
Let me say, in homes, I would encourage parents to read Malcolm Lives in conjunction with their young person. And I would encourage parents to encourage their young people, their young person to read. So almost form a small book club, right?
Right.
In their home.
Hmm.
And you read particular paragraphs, and then you talk about it. You share your ideas, you ask questions, and you encourage your young person to do the same. And you continue through the book like that. And I would encourage the parent to be as vulnerable as possible about what they learn and about
Hmm.
what they still want to know. And in particular moments when they don't really know an answer to a question, or how does racism exist in this way, for them to explore the answer to that question with their young person. And I think in case of teachers, I would encourage, I think teachers can use Malcolm Lives in units on the civil rights movement, in units on the 1960s, in units about racism. There's a number of different ways I think teachers can use this book and this life story.
Thank you. Those are great activities, advice. Now, Dr. Kendi, and I'm not making light, but I do something on this podcast called Lightning Round, where I ask my authors questions, and it's only a few, and you don't think about it, just if you whatever comes to mind. But if you have to pause for a moment, that's okay too. Okay, so a book you loved at age 11.
I can't even remember. I'm sorry.
That's okay. If you could spend one afternoon talking to any historical figure besides Malcolm, who would it be?
It would probably be W.E.B. Du Bois, a very prominent scholar and historian and one of the founders of the NAACP.
What's your favorite snack while writing?
Pretzels.
Fill in the blank. Middle grade readers are.
Middle grade readers are are curious.
Candy, you've given readers a timely, necessary, and deeply moving gift in Malcolm Lives. As they turn the page, what message do you hope echoes in their hearts and minds?
I'm hoping the message that echoes is that racism is a problem. It was a problem in Malcolm's time. It remains a problem in our time. And we need people to be like Malcolm and seek to challenge
Dr. Kendi, it's been an honor and a pleasure for being on Reading in the Middle. Listeners, this was wonderful. Please, right now, Malcolm Lives is out in your independent bookstores and your libraries, so pick up a copy. Thank you, Dr. Kendi.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me today for this meaningful conversation with Dr. Ibram X. Kendi about his remarkable new book, Malcolm Lives. As Dr. Kendi reminded us, Malcolm's story isn't just about the past. It's a powerful call to action for young readers right now. If you're inspired to bring this story home into your classroom or into your library shelves, Malcolm Lives is available wherever books are sold, your independent bookstore, and your library. And I truly hope you'll share this transformative read with the young people in your life. Until next time, keep reading, keep asking bold questions, keep pushing boundaries, and above all, keep reading in the middle.